I was just like, what in the world? Like, I didn't come here today thinking that I could potentially be going into labor at 6 months pregnant. Like, that was not the plan. Welcome back to my channel. It's your girl Ari. Today I have a story time for you. I don't typically do story times, but I felt like this was kind of relevant. So I just want to share what happened to me. And let me know in the comments if you've ever experienced anything like this, or if you know of anyone who's gone through something like this. So this is basically my story about almost going into early labor. Let's rewind to January. So around the end of January, I started having like, I don't know how to describe it, but if you hold your pee for too long and you really have to use the bathroom, like that kind of burning sensation on like my pelvic area. So I started to feel that towards the end of January, and I was peeing all the time, but I felt like my bladder was just never fully releasing. So it was kind of weird, but I just assumed that it was a normal part of pregnancy. I just figured, oh, this must be normal. They always say like you're gonna pee all the time, and so I figured that that was what it was. So I kind of just went along my business, kept living my life. But then on February 7th, I'm not gonna forget this day, it was a Friday. So on February 7th, I left work a little bit early to go to dinner with a former coworker. We go through dinner, we're having a good time. By the time dinner's over, like I have this pressure on my uterus, just like sitting on my pelvis, like I'm like, yo, I have to like pee so badly. And we're thinking, well, duh, like you're pregnant. I made sure to go to the bathroom, then I hopped in an Uber and I went home. By the time I got home, I was like, the pressure had intensified to the point where I was kind of walking funny. So I called my sister, who had a baby last March, April? When is my nephew's birthday? April. Last April, so April 2019. So I called her, and she's also pregnant again. So I was like, she'll know what's going on if this is normal. So I called her and said, is it normal to feel like just like an intense amount of pressure weighing down on your pelvis? And she was like, well, probably, like the baby's head is down. They're probably just like, you know, sitting there pressing on your bladder. So she didn't think anything of it, but then she also did say like, well, if you're not feeling well, you feel like something's wrong, just like call your doctor and see what's up. So I was like, okay. She suggested that I take like a warm bath and maybe that would help out. So I was like, it takes like 40 minutes to fill up that big old bathtub, so that's not gonna happen tonight. And I couldn't really walk. So I was just at the point where I was just like, I felt so heavy with the pressure that I was like, I just wanna sit down. So I just sat down and I figured, you know what, it should pass. I was like, let me just try to sleep it off. Maybe it'll go away. Maybe it's just like the baby's in a weird position. So I go to bed, I wake up pretty much every hour while I'm sleeping because I have to use the bathroom, or like I feel like I have to use the bathroom, but I haven't drank anything because I had this feeling like I had to pee constantly. So I was like, let me not drink anything, which is also bad because you're gonna get dehydrated and you need to be hydrated when you are pregnant. But I was like, I can't just like go to the bathroom every hour. I was getting no sleep. So I stopped drinking water, and I was still feeling like I had to pee every hour. So I would get up, go to the bathroom, and not much would come out. So I'm just like, what is going on? So I continue that throughout the entire night. And then I start having cramps, which is probably one of the most terrifying things that can happen when you're pregnant, short of like actually seeing blood. So I started having cramps and I was like, this doesn't feel right. I was like, something's going on. So wake up that morning, the cramps have intensified. And at that point I was like, this doesn't even feel like cramps anymore. I was like, I feel like I'm having contractions. So I end up calling the main hospital and talking to the person who's on call, and they were like, definitely come in. And I was like, okay, cool. So I took a shower, and then I told my husband, like, don't come in with me, because a lot of times, and like I didn't want to blow it up to be something that it wasn't. And I was also trying to like convince myself that it wasn't something crazy that was going on. So I was like, don't worry about it. I was like, stay here, and if I call you, then you come in. Especially since it was a Saturday too. Like if you've ever been to a hospital on a Saturday, you're gonna be there for a while basically. Like it takes a long time. So I was like, don't worry about it. I'll let you know if it's serious and you can come in and drive in. So I get to the hospital, and they first like have me change into a gown. They'd start taking my vitals and stuff, taking my blood pressure, just like checking everything. They put these, it's like a band. It's like they just like put it around your belly so that they can monitor the baby and just check the heart rate, make sure everything's okay with the baby. It was so hard though, because at that point the baby was pretty small, so they kept having to like move it and like push it down and try to find the baby's heart rate, which is also scary because you think like something's wrong, but it's just that the baby's so small that it takes a little bit for them to find it. So they did all that, they ran all these tests, and then they were like, you are having contractions. That is what you're feeling. And I was like, okay, so like, what does that mean? Because it's definitely like too early to be having this baby. At that point, I was, I think like 25 weeks pregnant. So if you don't speak weeks, like if you're not pregnant, I know a lot of people think in terms of months. I was only 6 months pregnant at that point. So, which is pretty early to be having a baby. It's very early, premature. So I wanted no parts of that. I was like, this baby has to stay in there. Like, we cannot do this right now. So at that point, I was kind of freaking out because they were like, we don't know if you're going into labor or not, but you actually are having contractions. So they were like, we're gonna have to do some tests, and if you're going into labor, we're gonna have to send you to the NICU, which is the Neonatal Intensive Care Unit. Basically, they handle like premature delivery and labor and babies, and they were like, you're gonna have to get a steroid immediately so that the baby's lungs and heart can develop a little quicker because they're so small. And I was freaking out at this point because now I'm like, oh crap, like I could literally be going into labor right now. So at that point, I called my husband and I was like, hey, they said that I am having contractions. I don't know what's going on. I'm waiting for the doctor to come in and check and let me know if everything's okay. And he was like, well, what does that mean? And I was like, well, they said that I could be going into labor. They'd have to send me to the NICU. And then he was like, okay, I'm on my way. Before he got there, the doctor had come into the room and was like, I'm gonna check your cervix and make sure that it's still closed. And he basically said, like, if your cervix is open, that means that you're going into labor, or if it's thinning, so we need to get you to the NICU so that you can get the steroids and, you know, hopefully we can deliver the baby. And I was just like, what in the world? Like, I didn't come here today thinking that I could potentially be going into labor at 6 months pregnant. Like, that was not the plan, but you know what happens when you make a plan. So I was just like, all right, so what does this entail? And it was a male doctor, which was fine. As long as you're a professional, it doesn't matter to me. But he had to check my cervix with his hand. So the nurse was there with me, and he basically had to feel my cervix to see if it was open or closed. It was super painful, and it was just very uncomfortable just because it hurt. They have to go really deep in to feel your cervix. So I was just like, oh my gosh, this is like a lot of pain. The nurse was great. She was holding my hand through the whole thing, and she knew that it was a painful situation. So she kind of warned me that it's gonna be very uncomfortable. But I didn't think it was gonna be that uncomfortable. So anywho, he finishes the cervix exam and the pelvic exam, and then he says, your cervix is actually closed still. It looks good. It's really thick, like you don't have anything to worry about right now as far as going into labor, but we need to figure out why you're having contractions still. So I'm like, okay, great, that's great news. So they start running more tests and stuff, and then they do like an ultrasound, and they notice that I have fibroids, which I was aware of, but I didn't realize that that was something that I needed to be concerned about because I've never had issues before. So fibroids basically feed off of the estrogen. So it was growing, and this particular fibroid had grown a couple centimeters. It had gotten to a point where it was so big that once they get to a certain size, sometimes they'll start to disintegrate on their own. And once they start to disintegrate and break down, they can trigger contractions and they cause intense pain in your pelvic area. So after they did an ultrasound, they ran some more tests, they did more blood work, they sent my test results to, I don't know, some other doctor, I guess, to confirm what was going on. And they confirmed, yeah, it's the fibroids that's causing all of this. So basically, they suggested that they monitor me overnight to make sure that the contractions stop and don't come back. They'd given me 2 IVs because I was dehydrated because I had stopped drinking water the night before. So I decided to stay overnight, and they brought me into a nice room downstairs, which was basically like the postnatal area. So after you give birth, it's one of those rooms that you would be in after you have your baby. And it was nice. It was like a large room. It had the bed that like reclines and goes up and, does everything. They had a bunch of pillows, a bunch of blankets. They also had like a big reclining little bed for guests. If my husband was going to stay there overnight, he could have slept there. They had a little table, and then you have your own like closet, you have your own fridge, you have your own sink, you have your own bathroom with a shower. So I was like, oh, okay, this is cool. And it was actually good because then I got to see the room that I would be in after giving birth, because I'd never seen it before. So I was like, oh, this actually kind of works out. Like, I kind of like this. So I get into the room. They have me like, they have all the needles in me for the blood work and stuff, which they just kind of like keep in your arm and like until they need to give you something. So they did that. I stayed there overnight. I had dinner there. I was watching Jurassic Park. Like every single version of Jurassic Park came on, and it was awesome. So I had a really good time, actually. It was very relaxing. They came and checked on me like probably every hour or so until I went to bed. And then while I was sleeping, I think they came in like once to check my blood pressure and stuff and make sure everything was good. But they gave me Tylenol to help with the pain. I'm the type of person that doesn't like to take any kind of medication. So I was a little hesitant at first, but I was like in a lot of pain. So I was like, whatever, I'll just take it. It allowed me to be able to sleep through the night, which was great because I hadn't been able to do that the night before with all the pain that I was experiencing. So it actually worked great. Next morning, still, the contractions had subsided. Everything was good. They came in, ran some more tests on me. I was talking with the nurses. So they're like, we're gonna make sure the doctor reviews this and then you can leave. And at first, they told me that it would probably be around like 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. that I could leave, so I was excited. But I was like, I'm getting some breakfast first. So I got everything, pancakes, eggs, I got everything. It was amazing. Some people don't like hospital food, but like this hospital actually had good food, so I liked it, I enjoyed it, and I was like, I could stay here for a little while longer, but I was like, I don't want to be here, I don't need to be here. So I was thinking that I was gonna get to leave around noon, because when they say 10 or 11 on a Sunday, you know that it's not 10 or 11. So I was like, okay, maybe around noon. So my husband's there, and we're just waiting, watching TV. Like 2 o'clock rolls around, 3 o'clock rolls around, 4 o'clock rolls around. I'm just like, did they forget about me? Like, I'm still here, But eventually the nurse came back in and she was like, oh, you're good to go. Like, everything is fine. She was like, just go to this pharmacy and grab some Tylenol. You can take it if you need to, as long as the pain is there. And I had asked them to, like, well, how long is the pain gonna last? Because it still hurt when I wasn't taking the Tylenol. And they were like, honestly, we don't know. Like, it differs from person to person. So apparently some people with fibroids, it can last months. And I was just like, whoa. And she did say, like, well, if you weren't pregnant, we could do surgery to have the fibroids removed, but obviously we can't do that because you're pregnant. So I was like, okay, well, I guess I'll just take the Tylenol, play it by ear, day by day, and see what happens. Fortunately, the pain started to subside a little bit, but then it got worse again after about 3 or 4 weeks. And I was just like, what is going on? So it just continued. So to this day, it is now almost May, and I still experience pain with the fibroids. I don't know if it's the same one that deteriorated or if it's a different one that's now deteriorating, but I still have fibroids, I still have pain, and I have such a great appreciation for anyone who has dealt with fibroid pain. You ladies are so strong. And then couple that with just actually being pregnant, so you're like physically just like getting bigger, and it's harder to walk, harder to breathe, harder to do everything. And it was just, it gave me a new appreciation for everything. But at the end of the day, I was really just happy that the baby was okay and that I was okay and that I wasn't going into labor. That was truly the biggest blessing. So that is my story about almost going into early labor. So let me know if you guys have any similar stories, if you guys have been through this or you know someone who's been through it. I hope that you guys like this video. Give it a thumbs up if you liked it. Don't forget to comment down below and subscribe to the channel. And we'll have more for you soon. So